In this video, I'm teaching you how I edit photos for clients and how I go from this to this. Hey there and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Chris. I recently quit my corporate job to pursue photography full-time. I'm teaching you photography and how to start a creative business. Today we're diving into Lightroom and Photoshop, and I'm showing you exactly how I edit my product photos for clients. Alright, so let's open up Lightroom and see what we've got. Today we're editing a product shot for a coffee company. We've got the coffee up in the foreground and then the blurred out bottle in the background. You'll notice there's some spillage here, so we'll be able to Photoshop that out and I'll show you guys exactly how I do that. But for now we're going to start with Lightroom and start at the top of our panels, which is the white balance. So my camera's set to 5600. But my strobe is at 6500, so we're going to set that to 6500 to ensure the white balance is correct. Next, the exposure. I usually try and get this as spot on as possible in the camera, so we're not going to touch that for now. Contrast, we're not going to touch. Instead, we're going to add contrast with these four sliders: the highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. So we're going to what I usually do is I dip the highlights a bit, then take the shadows, up them a tiny bit, dip the whites, and then we're going to take the blacks down kind of low. I want to add some color from this backdrop, and lowering the blacks allows me to do that. Next, in this next panel, we're going to up the texture a tad. Going to go down, skip the rest of this. I think the saturation here is fine. Not going to touch the vibrance, not going to touch clarity or dehaze either. But the tone curve, we're going to use this to add more contrast to the photo. So an S-curve is a really good starting point. So we're going to add a point right in the middle, and then at the highlights we're going to up them a tiny bit, and then the shadows, drop those a bit. So now we can see that the S-curve is really adding some nice contrast to this image. This image was shot with harsh light, that's why there's this big shadow here, and this S-curve really helps bring out that harshness. The HSL tab, the hue, saturation, luminance, we're going to skip for this photo. I think the coffee is color accurate here. The backdrop here is a nice color, so there's not really much for us to do. Color grading, again, I'm not going to do anything here. Masking, sharpening. Sharpening, we're going to do a little bit by dragging the mask slider up. And before we do that, we're going to hold down Option on our keyboard if we're using a Mac, and then drag this up a bit. Now we're going to see these lines forming in the back on the photo, and we want to drag this so we just have lines around the main subject. So we've got around the glass, the shadows, and the bottle in the back. So I think that's good, and what that will do is just make the photo a little bit more crispy. Lens correction, we're going to skip for this one. There's nothing we have to transform here. Effects, we're going to add a little bit of a vignette to it. Just -5, nothing too crazy. And we're going to skip calibration as well. So now we've done one run through. Let's see what we've got so far. That's the before, and that's the after. So we've definitely brightened it, add more contrast to the image as well. So next we're gonna just keep on messing with it until we get something we really love. Maybe drop the exposure just a tad. We're gonna start adding some radial filters to it as well. We want to make this bottle in the back stand out, so I'm going to add one radial filter and up the exposure just a tad, and then drop the blacks and drop the shadows a bit so there's no reflections going on there. This jot, we kind of want to make that stand out, so what we could do is take this brush tool, make it about this size of these letters, and start brushing in. And then let's up the exposure and see what we've done. Yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and do a quick brush along here just to make this brand name stand out. We know it's a little bit blurry, but we still want it to be that nice bright white. Okay, so we didn't crop at the beginning, so let's do that now. We're gonna do a standard 4x5 crop for social. This is a great crop if the client is using their images for social media. Best crop for Instagram in my opinion. And what we have right now, I think, is a nice image. If you saw this in your Instagram newsfeed, you might stop and look and even check out this brand. So what we're gonna do next is go into Photoshop and get rid of all these blemishes. So we're gonna hit Control E on our keyboard, or Command E on our keyboard, and then get into Photoshop and do the finishing touches on that. Okay, so now we've got the image loaded into Photoshop, and we're going to just get rid of these blemishes. First, we're gonna hit Command J, duplicate our layer, and go into this healing brush. I like to start with the spot healing brush tool, and then just paint over these blemishes that we don't want. So we can use our brackets to increase the brush size and just kind of paint over it and watch everything disappear. This will usually work if it's a clean background like this, because the software can easily identify what's supposed to be there and what isn't. So we're just going to try and paint over anything that shouldn't be there, mainly these coffee spots. Sometimes when I'm shooting, these something will happen like this. I'll spill some coffee, and I can either redo the scene or redo it in post, and I just make a decision there to see which one will take longer. If it will be longer to do in post, I'll just reshoot the scene there. If doing it in post will fix it faster, then I'll just do it there. Moving on to the glass, we're going to get rid of this dust here, any blemishes in the glass as well. Again, using the same tool, it usually does a really great job. And what we're doing now is not necessary, but it just makes the photos look really nice. You're not going to be zooming in on social media, but you want the photos to be the best possible for the client. You want to make the client happy. Next, we go to this bottle, and we can either get rid of these bright spots or keep them in. I think getting rid of them won't really add much to the photo. Keeping them in also shows that there's like a bright light source here and adds at least some depth to the bottle, so I like that. We could Photoshop out these bubbles, but that's again personal preference. So I think what we have now looks pretty nice. We're gonna hit Command S, save that, and go back into Lightroom. So now we've got the photo here in Lightroom, and now we're back in Lightroom, and we can see what we did. We started out with this photo right here, kind of bright, a little bit blue, kind of bright blue in terms of white balance. But after a bit of playing around, we're left with this final result. Next, we can go ahead and just export it to wherever you want, and you're set. If you've watched this far, thank you. I really appreciate the support, and if you can like and subscribe to the channel, that would mean a lot to me. I also want to say a special thank you to all my new subscribers. Welcome to the channel. I'll see you all in the next one.